with theatres you have to have an exceptionally high acoustic performance. The nature of evacuation processes for the theatres, you actually have to have very high fire protection performance. And with this particular project, as with many, the actual time frames involved in terms of construction were exceptionally tight, so we were looking for ways in which we could actually speed that up. You could see straight off the bat that the erection sequence for Speedwall construction was far superior to the normal construction for a theatre, which generally involves 3 layers of plasterboard overlapping on every surface, which, as you can imagine, is hugely labour intensive.
Normally between the ceiling of the cinema and the roof you provide an airspace which is part of the acoustic design to stop the sound going from one auditorium to the other auditorium. And often that involves lifting large layers of jib up through a scaffold system and placing them vertically into the roof. By installing the building frame and purlins and then placing the Speedwall on top of them, we provided an acoustic membrane on the outside of the frame, which allowed us to effectively minimize the amount of jib we put in the ceilings, remove that gap, and also limit the time frame. We had to have this enormous scaffold inside a cinema box and the task of lifting jib up to the ceiling, which is a very difficult, time-consuming and manpower system.
Certainly I think the number of steps involved in Speedwall took out the possibility of there being a flaw somewhere along the line, and I think just again the nature of the system where it's virtually a slide together, it removes a lot of that human error factor.
Most of the STC limitations are in the jointing and the connections and the steel work, and what's important is that you had a company that was guaranteeing it and installing it, so their motivation to making sure all those joints and there was no shortcuts taken was very good.
The overall construction period for this project was 10 months or 11 months. It was certainly acknowledged by all parties that it cut out about 6 to 8 weeks worth of actual construction time, which is quite a considerable amount.
Which saved us in height of the building, which saved us structure, which went right through to the foundations. So the knock-on effects were quite large, and larger than we initially realised. Speedwall manufacturing is well ahead of the game. They had supplied the product on site, they were able to move quickly, and I think what's important is you're able to close the building in as soon as possible, get it more or less watertight very, very quickly, which allows you to go inside the cinema and start to do a lot of the finishing work.
And we actually had it tested, and it actually ended up performing better than we thought it would. I would certainly see that there's a huge potential in multi-unit residential. I would also suggest that there's huge potential in the likes of any real building that requires fire-rated lift cores or cores in general. Simply because of the fact the inherent 2-hour fire rating plus the acoustic performance. So I think there's a big potential for that, and the same things would happen with cost savings.